Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. We've got a fun 11-game slate tonight with some pretty marquee matchups. In this one, we're taking a look at the Memphis Grizzlies playing host to the Brooklyn Nets, which means the Nets do have Kyrie Irving tonight, and we are going to dive into a lot of fun stuff that we have with this one. Ja Morant is out, so that's not quite as fun, obviously, but still plenty to bet on in this one. Nate does have his great article up on playpicks.com with some best bets and player props in there for you. And make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Actually got 3 game videos up for you today, as well as our player props video that we love to bring you each and every weekday. And make sure you're headed to thelines.com, checking out all of the odds that we have available for you there, laying out all of the odds available from odds makers, and getting the best juice available on your odds there. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or a DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, you got the Grizz +2 at home without Ja here. Brooklyn obviously favored now that they have both of those superstars on the floor. Just as a jumping off point, they have a ridiculous 133 offensive rating when Durant and Kyrie are both playing this year. So that totals up at 237. I've seen it as high as 239.5. It might creep up and close around 240. So interesting number there to think about. Maybe taking the under, to be honest. It's a little scary, but I would not love taking the over in this spot. 10 other games on the slate to look at, though. The Knicks are +7.5 at Charlotte. New York on a back-to-back. Charlotte has won 5 straight. Kings +6 at the Pacers. Total of 235. Could have a lot of points in that. Hawks on a back-to-back. -5 at Detroit. Warriors on a back-to-back. +7 at Miami. The Jazz are +5 at Boston. That is a game we will break down. Total around 218 there. Magic -2 at Thunder. The Suns -1 at Minnesota, and we will also break that one down for you. A little bonus episode on a Wednesday. Rockets +10 at Dallas. Sixers -7 at Lakers with Embiid and Harden expected to return. And then the Spurs are -10 at the Blazers. I mean, the Nets, it's about just taking the Nets to win right now. I think we both agree that the total is a lot dicier than just banking on Kyrie and KD in clutch time because they have been absolutely money this season. 5-2 straight up with them. One of those losses was just a weird head scratcher when Kyrie was just starting to play in Portland. The other was a loss to Miami, 115-111 in KD's first game back. And I kind of feel like without Ja Morant, Memphis has a lot of similarities to Miami in that they don't necessarily push the pace as much. They're very much a herky-jerky team that relies on their incredible length and physicality to kind of bruise you up. Now they have Dylan Brooks back. Defense is much better with him on the floor. Their defense without Ja in general, when Dylan Brooks was kind of the banner carrier for them for a while, they're now 14-2 with a 99 defensive rating without Ja. I know you'll point at the strength of competition there in that span. And yes, they only really beat 2 winning teams in the Sixers and the Heat, holding the Sixers to 91, if I'm not correct, and the Heat to 90 points. So I don't think, you asked me when's the last time the Nets didn't score 120 without Kyrie. I mean, with Kyrie, and it was in Miami in KD's game first back, 111. I don't know if both teams get to 120 tonight. I think it'll be a pretty physical, choppy game. I mean, somebody's going to slow down Kyrie eventually. That doesn't mean, I'm still taking the over on his 26.5 points all day. And I'm still expecting Durant to bring it in this matchup because there is no one-on-one stopper for him. But what I'm looking at most is just the clutch numbers. And I don't really need a lot of numbers to say what those two guys, those 2 champions do in the clutch. And Memphis in the clutch has posted a 130 defensive rating in their last 4 clutch situations here. I don't really trust them to close as much, even though they are at home here. I think Brooklyn, 3-1 on the road since the All-Star break. They have the best offensive rating on the road this season in general. And that's, with Kyrie not playing a good bulk of the season with KD being out to kind of juke that. But as I mentioned, when those guys are on the floor, 133 points per 100 possessions, simply insane. And Kevin Durant, best player in the world on the floor. So, I mean, the Nets with the two best players on the floor here tonight. They probably won't have Dragic or Seth Curry, though, which I think, again, hurts the over. They won't be able to space the floor as much. They won't have that backup engine to go when Kyrie sits. But with Kyrie on this much rest, having not played in 8 days, I don't think that's a huge factor. I think he will be fresh down the stretch, and the Nets should pull this out now, looking to win a seventh of their last 8 as they try to close strong.
Yeah, I concur. With all of that, I think when you look at the total right now, like you said, I don't love needing for at least one of these teams to get 120 tonight. Like I said in my question to you before we started the show, when's the last time the Nets didn't score 120 with Kyrie? It doesn't happen very often, but I do like your comparison to the Ja Morant-less Memphis Grizzlies being a lot like the Miami Heat in how they play this game with a lack of a closer at this point. Ja has the 10th most points per game in the fourth quarter, so we know he's getting the ball down the stretch and doing his thing. Without him, they're in trouble. I mean, if you look at their net rating in clutch time this season, Memphis is third. But if you look at specifically on the road, where the Nets are a full strength team when they're on the road and not at home, they have the third best net rating in the NBA, and Memphis drops down a bunch. So I think that's a lot more of a telling stat than obviously just their net rating in the fourth quarter overall, which even without Kyrie being able to play in those games, they still have the 10th best net rating in the fourth quarter, even without Kyrie. So this is going to be a game where the lack of Ja in the scoring is going to be big for them. I mean, this would be an opportunity, I believe, if Ja was there. I mean, for the over to hit at 240, and I wouldn't even feel that nervous about it, especially because you look at what the way that the Grizzlies score. It's, as we know, off of transition. It's off of turnovers. It's off of second chance points as well. With Steven Adams banging down there, but without Ja getting rebounds as well this year and leading that fast break, as it's going to be a problem for them tonight to score. They're actually in the bottom 10 in terms of half court offense. So when you make them slow it down and play in the half court, they're not nearly as efficient as they are when they get in transition, as the best team in transition in the NBA, most efficient, et cetera, et cetera. Like once they get going, now you're in trouble. And so with Brooklyn making shots tonight, I believe that they'll continue to do that at the rate that they have been. I mean, Kyrie shooting, we know what his numbers have been as of late in their last 37 a game, shooting 60% from the field, 58.5% from three. I really don't know what you're supposed to do with that. Like you said, at some point, Kyrie will slow down a bit, but I don't think it's because somebody is slowing him down. It's just going to be, he's not able to shoot at that insane rate. But the other thing to consider here is Kevin Durant is his biggest cheerleader. I mean, after every single game, KD's going back to Twitter to go, 11 just put on a show tonight. Make sure you guys are taking notes. And he's not wrong. And he's showing that during the games by getting even more assists in those games. In the last 4 that they've played together, KD averaging 7.5 assists a game. His assists have been up in general, even in the last 3 that he played without Kyrie, where he went off. He averaged 8 assists a game in that time frame as well. So he's dishing the ball, and especially looking for Kyrie when Kyrie's able to play, as you mentioned, with 8 days of rest in between the last time that he played and now. So I think this is it's going to be the case, as we move down the stretch here, where when they're on the road, Brooklyn's going to be, if not the best team in the league, a top 3 team right now. And the last thing I would add to that is, we talk about with both of them on the floor this season, they're outscoring teams by 18 points per 100. That offensive rating at 129 or so, as you mentioned at the top of the show. I would also throw in there, you add Bruce Brown, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, which is really their starting lineup right now, to round it out with those 3 guys and Kyrie and KD when they're on the road. When you add those 3 guys, their offensive rating actually jumps to 135. Now, their defensive rating goes up a bunch as well to 128. But I still think, I'm not nearly as comfortable with that total as we've said a couple times now. So I think just knowing how good those guys are all over the floor, I think they'll be able to get past that Memphis defense enough to pull this one out by the measly 2.5 points or so.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned how Memphis scores. You didn't say paint points, which they've led the league in 3 straight years, the highest percentage by 3 percentage points this year, scoring 50.7% of their points down there. And Brooklyn happens to be second in opponents' paint points on the road. number 1 in field goal percentage, 7th in defensive rating. Again, this includes a 24-game stretch where Durant, who's probably their most important defender, most versatile defender, was out, and they just plummeted defensively. But they've proven that they can win on the road and outscore teams on both ends here. I mean, with both those guys on the floor, they're plus 18 in those 7 games with a 110 defensive rating. Pretty solid the way the NBA is going these days. And of course, that huge 129 offensive rating. So, I mean, I think that they will be able to get enough stops here. I think that Memphis will finally kind of run into a top team without Ja and show that they do definitely need their floor general here, and that it's kind of, it's almost playoff time at this point for the Nets. It must feel like playoff time because they're pulling out of a tailspin here, trying desperately to maybe catch Cleveland. They're only 3 games behind them at this point and avoid that play-in tournament. And I don't think Memphis, as we saw last year, great regular season team. Once it got to the playoffs, though, they were just still a step behind. I mean, still some room to growth. And they're facing 2 of the best closers in the world tonight who have shown no issues playing on the road. So I think the Nets at -2 at the money line, close to even money. Both are just very solid bets. And there's some good performance doubles, particularly just for Kyrie to score 30 in the win, plus 280. 25 in the win still gets you plus money. And they're not going to win without him scoring.
Yeah, 25 in the win gets you plus 174 on FanDuel as we're looking at it. 4 threes is plus 275. In his last 4, he's averaging 6 made threes a game on just over 10 attempts. So as I mentioned, that 58.5% 3-point percentage. Yeah, that's right where I went to is those player performance doubles, just because I love when there's that -2 spread, but we still feel really, really good about Brooklyn, especially straight up on the road. It's a little bit more of a what's the scenario of what they do straight up versus what they do against the spread with such a small spread, to be honest. They're obviously, we know what their road record is this season, way better than their home record and what you would expect on the road. So I think there's a couple of things here. Like we said, the Kyrie points. I'm staying away from the KD points, but if you like Kevin Durant, 7+ assists and the win is 190. I told you he's averaging more than 7 assists a game with Kyrie this season. He's actually averaging 8 in his last 3 games overall, which were without Kyrie. So I would really consider the 7 assists and a win as well. And the Kyrie points is where I'm looking tonight. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Got that extra bonus game video up for you today. So 3 game videos and that player props one we love to bring you. And until we see you next, happy betting.